antenna on your portable, handheld radio should be protected and covered. The antenna screws into the top of the radio and should periodically be checked to make sure it is securely attached. Without this appendage, there is very little to no chance of transmitting or receiving radio signals. The standard length antenna can seem a bit long and feel a bit unwieldy to some folks. These folks sometimes get the bright idea that if you bend the thing in half with the top pointing down and secure it with a wire tie, it will be more comfortable on the duty belt. Wrong! This is a definite no-no. To some folks, an antenna can seem like a handy handle for their radio. Wrong! Another no-no. The wire inside of the antenna can and will break if not protected and covered. In some cases, there are shorter antennas available to folks who have a problem with a longer one. See your radio system administrator for options, as there are circumstances in certain areas where a shorter antenna is not an option due to marginal signal strength. Portable radio battery. When charged properly and in good condition, your portable radio battery is your friend. It allows your transmitter to work at full power and will get you through your shift with no problem. If not charged and maintained properly, your battery is going to be a problem for you, likely when you need it most. A low battery is detrimental to proper signal transmission. All radios will have an audio and visual signal that the battery is low. Pay attention to your radio tones and LEDs. Make sure you plug your battery into its proper charger after every shift and give it time to go through its charging process. Do not leave your battery in your car overnight in freezing temperatures. If you have taken good care of your battery and it doesn't hold a charge, take it to your radio system administrator and receive a new battery as soon as possible. Most law enforcement and fire agencies use the emergency button on their radios, both handheld and vehicular. Radios are programmed to divert their emergency communication to a specific talk group, no matter which talk group the radio is tuned to when the emergency button is pressed. When an emergency button is pressed on a radio out in the field, the dispatch center that receives the emergency alarm hears a loud audio signal and a very noticeable visual on their console screen. The radio alias or name comes up on their screen as well. A dispatcher will acknowledge the emergency alarm and silence the audio temporarily until the emergency is cleared by the end user in the field. To clear an emergency from the radio, you may press and hold the emergency button for about a second or turn your radio off and then back on again. As it often happens, the emergency button can easily be accidentally pressed. Users must be very careful not to let this happen. Not only is it a distraction in the typically busy dispatch center, it causes an unneeded stressful adrenaline rush. Channels on a radio refer to the number on the channel knob. When someone says move to channel 2, they typically mean for you to turn your channel knob to number 2. However, sometimes they mean move to the secondary talk group your agency uses. If you find yourself confused by this, be sure to ask what is meant by channel 2. Typically, agencies are consistent in their use of this term. Zones in a radio refer to a space created via programming in a radio that contains a number of talk groups programmed to coincide with channels. Most radios have several zones programmed into them for specific uses. Usually the first zone will contain the talk groups that are most often used by the agency. When someone tells you to move your radio communications to Zone 2, Channel 3, for instance, you would change the radio zone to Zone 2 and your channel knob to number 3. Refer to your radio instructions for moving to a different zone. Talk groups are trunked radio system channels created for specific uses for agencies using that system. An agency or department may have only one primary use talk group or several, depending on the size and type of the user agency. These talk groups are programmed to coincide with specific radio channels on the channel knob and into specific zones in the radio. A talk group will have a name assigned to it, which is referred to as an alias. Examples of talk group aliases are ACSO1, Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office 1, or DCSO1, Douglas County Sheriff's Office 1, and so forth. Every agency has their own naming process, but there can be no duplications in the system, and they cannot exceed a certain number of characters. Many agencies share some of their talk groups with each other for easier interoperability and mutual aid. Radio channel matrix or template. This is what is programmed into your radio. There are talk groups that you use every single day, and there are talk groups that you use only during mutual aid or during an emergency. Get to know what's in your radio. Know where to find your interoperability talk groups or channels. Know how to get there. It's a lot to remember, so practice, practice, practice.